Uh, one of the things we talk about in World War II is the sense of being the good guys. And I think in the era that followed World War II, we were less convinced that we were always intrinsically the good guys. But you had the opportunity to go up against some of the most horrible people we've ever seen in modern times. Is that a fair characterization of the enemy?
Yes.
Can you talk about, and I would actually like to do it somewhat unflinchingly, what distinguished ISIS in terms of, I talk about a concept most people don't react to called message violence, where the point of the violence is to be so picturesque that it works its way into your mind and it won't let you go because somebody did something that was unnecessarily unthinkable just for the purpose of torturing your brain with knowing that that's what's on the other side. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah. So the term ISIS started being used around 2007. My last deployment ended in 2006, but the characters are still the same, and they weren't as organized as they became when they became ISIS, when they started flying the ISIS flag. And then what you had was this recruitment, this worldwide recruitment of sadistic, evil human beings coming to the caliphate to torture and murder and rape systematically girls and boys. And yeah, what we saw in Ramadi in 2006 was it's the worst nightmares that you can imagine, from people being skinned alive, people being beheaded, people being tortured in all manners, rape used as a weapon of war, just everything, every horrible thing that you can imagine.
Family members being violated in front of other family members.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's why, for us, when you ask, did you feel like the good guys? Oh yeah, we definitely felt like the good guys. And we especially felt like the good guys because the local populace is who was enduring these heinous acts was the local populace, the local people that lived in Ramadi. That's who was enduring and suffering these horrible acts. So when we came in and started eliminating the insurgents, they were ecstatic and they were happy that we were there. And they, believe me, they wanted nothing more than to help us get those insurgents out of the city and out of the country.
What is it that you think, you mentioned the caliphate, and my fear is that the caliphate was sort of a remote dream, and that what we allowed to happen was that the caliphate came to be a potential reality in a world of people who hadn't been used to thinking about it until recently. That in essence, there have been a couple of major shifts in the Islamic world. One is, for example, suicide bombing was almost unknown before the Lebanese barracks. And then it was perfected in Sri Lanka by the Tamil rebels against
the Sinhalese populace. Well,
and then it comes back to the
not everyone in Sri Lanka. I mean, the Sri Lanka, the Tamil Tigers, there was Tamils that were in the Sinhalese or that were in the Sri Lankan army.
Right. So it wasn't a pure ethnic war. But that tactic was yes, very strange in the way in which it's been a relatively modern invention. And then it came back to the Middle East, and that together with the concept of the caliphate started to animate a kind of sleeping Islamic identity that hadn't been wildly present. I mean, I sort of analogize it to what would happen in Judaism if somebody started rebuilding the temple and all of this code that has never been run, like where you can reconvene the Sanhedrins to mete out death penalties according to Jewish law. Thank God we don't have a third temple, right? But somehow we let this idea go from fantasy to some kind of reality. Is that wrong, that somehow we allowed something to animate this portion of the world and it went very sadistic and psychopathic?
I think it is wrong that we allowed that to happen. And it was clear to people that had been in Iraq that there was embers of the insurgency, of this sadistic insurgency, that there were embers that were still burning when we pulled out. And so once we pulled out, all of a sudden, the firemen, there was a fire at a house. They came, sprayed some water on it. The flames were gone, and then they left. That's what we did. Well, the fire's not out yet. Right. And so then it didn't take long for those embers to rekindle and start completely burning out of control. And then we let it get to a point where, I mean, in the city of Ramadi, we had people that we knew who, when ISIS took over Ramadi, which Ramadi was peaceful from 2007 until 2014, 2015, like completely peaceful. When ISIS came in, they rounded up about 500 families that had families members who had worked with the coalition forces, and they murdered them all.
Right.
So just sick, sadistic, subhuman beings that should never have been allowed to do that. Now they did it, and once they did, and they took Ramadi and they took Mosul, when Iraqi forces went back in with the support of heavy American firepower, they cleaned those places out, and it took, I mean, they wiped out about 40,000 ISIS fighters, which is pretty much all of them. Pretty unique situation.
Were they skilled fighters?
Some of them were, but what was interesting is you had them wearing uniforms, carrying flags, and trying to act like a conventional military force in many ways. Not always, but in many ways. And so, you want to get into conventional war with America. That's not a good tactic, but it was a good tactic for us, for them to do that.
Right.
Because, fighting an insurgency is much more difficult than fighting an open conventional war.